Now we're getting somewhere. Now we're making progress. After all, we've forgotten everything we learned over the holidays.
We didn't learn anything. We just hacked our way through it every time.
Yeah, I tell you, well, at least we didn't have to start at ground zero every day. we were at least one rung up the ladder.
What's a computer?
Yeah, no kidding.
What's a camera?
What is this thing? Yeah, and I'm on a different computer than I've been on, and it's all just nothing works like it ought to, ever. Or at least it doesn't work the way you expect it to.
Yeah.
So, how were your holidays? We haven't seen each other in a while. We tried to do some videos while I was on the road, and it failed miserably.
Right. Well, it was either one or the other of us with the troubles. It was like constant. Well, let's try this again tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah. But now we're all settling in back at home. Things feel comfortable now.
Well, our holidays were great. It was very low key. We didn't travel. Talked to family a little bit, and just did the Zoom thing and phone calls and texting and all that kind of thing. But it was just us, and it's low key, and it was. I mean, it's really refreshing. Yeah. I mean, your son's grown, so you're past that point of needing to travel to 14 places on Christmas morning. It just is the most obnoxious circus. By the end of the day, the kids are just screaming and you're pissed off.
The usual, yeah.
It was really nice. We just sort of woke up and had coffee and just hung out. It was really pleasant. I guess that's an unexpected upside to a pandemic,
Yeah, things mellow out a little bit. Yeah, my wife and I were in the camper in Florida for a month. We traveled a little bit, went down to Sanibel Island and St. Augustine, and my son drove down with his dog, spent about a week or so with us, which was nice.
That's good.
Right over Christmas, which was good. And it was a fun. Then I came back and there was a envelope in the.
Were you on the island on Christmas? Were you on the island on Christmas Day, Bill?
No, we were in St. Augustine.
Okay.
State Park right on the beach.
There's much worse places to be on Christmas.
Yeah, but it was a little bit chilly. It wasn't quite the shorts and a t-shirt kind of. Sanibel, the first 2 weeks were great. I mean, the weather was beautiful and all that. A little bit of rain, but it got cooler. The whole East Coast got cold and windy and sort of dreary over the last, Christmas to New Year's kind of thing. So, but it was still really nice. It was good. It was in the 60s during the day and that kind of stuff. So it wasn't.
It was just cold here.
Yeah,
it was just cold and wet. It rained almost the entire holiday.
Yeah, that's what I heard. We were happy where we were. It was nice. We were gone for a month, and a month was about the right amount of time.
Yeah.
And I got back and I had an envelope with some artwork and some cow jokes and all kinds of stuff from your youngins, which was a treat. I got all kinds of pictures and
I can't remember what all they sent you, but they worked on that for a little while before they finally committed to sending stuff.
There were some drawings in there. There was a volcano. There was the traditional Christmas volcano colored in. There was a cow joke from John and some pictures from Calder and all kinds of stuff. It was a treat.
Good.
It was nice.
Good.
It was nice that
that's fun.
They thought of us enough to send us something.
They're always, man, they talk about you guys all the time. John and Calder both want to come back and have hot dogs at your shop.
Well, I tell you, that's the best thing of all the stuff I've got, the ShopBots and the sanders and the chop saws and all that. That when I bought a grill was the best thing I ever bought for the shop. So lots of times in the summer, I'll just cook something for lunch, and it'll be cooking along while I'm working, and it doesn't disrupt the day much.
It's nice.
Yeah. It was.
Speaking of cooking.
Yes, sir.
Speaking of cooking.
I
have a show and tell for you that I think you're going to like. I spent more time than I care to admit researching heat for this shop.
Okay.
And we finally figured out what we're going to do, and I'm really genuinely hoping that this works.
Is it just 55-gallon drums full of all your scrap that you're going to burn in there?
Yeah, all over the shop, just barrels.
The burn barrel.
Open fire.
Mm-hmm.
No, we ended up talking to this company that I think it's black body heaters.
Okay.
That are infrared radiant heaters. They're overhead. They're designed for industrial environments. There's no combustible surfaces.
Huh.
So it's safe for woodworking environments, things like that. And it's the heaters we decided on. We have 14-foot ceilings in the shop, and so the heaters we decided on are 48-inch panels.
Okay.
And they have a spread of 10 feet in the narrow direction and 15 feet in the long direction of the shape of this rectangular heater, at 12 feet above the floor. And so we're going to put in banks of 3 heaters, like 3 per side.
Okay.
In the shop, running the the orientation of the shop is kind of a long way. And basically what the data shows is that if we turn on the heaters at the beginning of the cold season, right? So say late October or whatever, when it actually starts to get cold, we turn them on at 100% for 48 hours.
Okay.
And it's going to warm the slab and all the equipment up.
Okay.
And then we back them off to 30% on a timer. So they'll kind of cycle on, cycle off at 30% energy consumption through the cold months.
Okay.
And it will maintain a really nice working temperature in here. My goal is to have it, somewhere around 60 degrees, which is a really nice working temperature. These don't warm the ambient air. It's it's infrared radiant heat, so it's like the sun. It's going to warm objects.
Right.
But the real thing is warming the slab. This concrete slab in a building full of cast iron and steel is just, I mean, it's 20 degrees colder in here right now than it is outside. I mean, it's when I was on my way to work, the thermostat in the car, or the thermometer in the car, read 38 degrees. And it feels easily 15 degrees in here right now. I mean, I can see my breath when I'm talking to you. It's cold. So I'm wearing coats indoors.
Yeah.
Which has to stop.
I can say, well, I got a sweatshirt on.
So anyway, here's the show and tell. This is the let's see if it'll focus on this.
Right. Okay.
You see that?
Yeah, percentage timer.
Yeah. So it's just, for how long you want it to run, at what percentage. And so each one of the heaters will have one of these thermostats on it, basically, thermostats that we can control it by zone. So if we're not using part of the shop, like it's in 2020, we only used certain areas in the shop for any prolonged period of time, then I don't have to run the heaters at all. I can just turn them off and just use the ones that I'm under.
Are they propane?
It'd be really nice.
What's the fuel source?
It's 240 electric.
Okay, it's electric.
Yeah. So anyway, they gave us a price break as a school, and are willing to work with us and help us get all this done. But we got these timers, we got these percentage timers on Amazon, pretty good price. They're well made. So anyway, we're gonna have heat. Yay!
You start hanging them.
As soon as they show up, man, they're going. I'm dropping everything, and the heaters are going up. So
I mean, I've got functionally the same problem you do. Cinder block walls, concrete floor, probably close to 14-foot ceiling. It's a long way up. I got enough door in the end that you can drive a combine through, so it's plenty. I got plenty of ceiling. And
yeah, and the problem is that any heat you get just rises straight up to the ceiling, sits as a pocket up there.
all I got is this one Modine heater here.
We have the same thing, and it's like, 17 dinosaurs an hour to run it.
Yeah, it's 3 gallons of propane an hour. So I don't run it at night. I come in, I turn it on. When I can't see my breath anymore, I turn it off. I mean, that's the deciding factor.
It's just, I mean, it was okay in its day, but it's just that, Modine heaters are just inefficient, and they're,
It's in the middle of the shop pointing in one direction. So unless you're standing in the airflow, I don't allow to line all the tools up the way the hot warm air blows.
Yep.
But yeah, that sounds very cool. I'm interested in seeing how that turns out.
Yeah, we're pretty excited about it. So we've put in over the year, in a huge ventilation system in the building. So we've got banks of new ceiling fans up. We've got this huge 56-inch exhaust fan on the back of the building, and we've got some big overhead ambient filter, air filtration units. So we've got these 2 windows high up on the wall. So we're bringing fresh air in and circulating that fresh air down and around, and then the filtration units are feeding the exhaust air out to the exhaust fan.
Okay.
So we're gonna have a really nice time in here over the summer. We had some of the fans running while Scott and I were working this summer or last summer, and it was really tolerable. I mean, it was hot, but it was much better than the previous summer, which was just agonizing.
Well, so tolerable's worth a lot.
Well, it's the thing when you're in a shop working, you don't need it to be 72 degrees. Ideally, it would be wonderful if the world worked that way. But as soon as you open a shop door to get air in, you've lost it all.
Yeah. And
so air conditioning a building like this, number one, is just wastefully expensive. And that we have a shared wall with it's a downtown building, so we have a shared wall that's an old masonry wall we can't really insulate without building it out. And then you'd have to completely insulate the ceiling in here. You'd have to completely insulate all the interior walls.
Yeah.
It would cost a fortune. And then still, once you open a door or a window, that's it.
You'd have to build airlocks for every entry and exit point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had an HVAC guy come in here, the guy that I know and trust came in when I bought the building. And I said, "What are our options?" And he kind of smiled at me and said, "Coats and shorts."
Yeah. Yeah. If you can make it tolerable, that's about all you can hope for. It's just make it so that it's not so miserable you can't work.
Yeah.
If you can just kind of slice the extremes off, the super highs and the super lows, and kind of keep it somewhere in the middle range and moving air around.
Right.
Summers, as long as you can keep some air moving, you're good. And
it was really. We had a few uncomfortably hot days over the summer, but the interesting thing is the exact opposite thing happens in a building like this. It's cooler in here longer into the year than it is outside.
Yeah. That's the key. It starts early in the morning, and when it gets, the slab's cool, the walls are cool. You start real early in the morning and work till 3 o'clock or something like that, when it just when you feel like your lungs are going to burn, and then you knock off. You still get your time in. But it's, this is
exactly.
We've all done all this stuff. It's there's no good solution, especially for big shops.
Well, I feel like some of these new generation of heaters might actually make a difference.
I think so.
They're not terribly expensive.
I think,
and they're
cold is more of a solvable problem than being hot. I don't think there's a good hot in the summer solution. It's just live with it.
Right.
Cuss a lot, keep some air moving. You just put on your big warm pants and be hot.
So let's talk vacuum.
Yeah, tell me about it. So you've been we haven't talked about your fancy new vacuum hold down system and how you ended up doing it. What was your the path to vacuum?
Well, basically, you know, we've been talking about that since we got set up with this, and you know, I've just sort of lived with it. I've been screwing things down and building jigs and clamping things, and you know, every conceivable work holding technique, and some of them are, you know, some of them are going to stick around. I mean, I made this small part jig that works beautifully. That I'll keep, but you know, screwing down to the spoil board really is, it works, but it's a real pain. And then you get all those little dimples where you got the screw holes, and you got to clean those up, or you get these rocking parts.
And there's no good way. You know,
it's
if
just
you go through a pilot hole, you have worse pucker, and you're holding the piece up. You know, it's threaded through your part and threaded through the table, so there's that little bit of air gap between. It screws everything up. Yeah.
Well, and then like with offset jigs, you know, using a right angle jig like the one that you designed for the desktop, those are great. But when you're in production, you can't, you know, squaring things up and then remembering to program the offsets with everything, all that other stuff is a problem. And I was also working with a lot of 5x10 material, 5x8 material, so that the offset jig wouldn't have worked anyway. And you know, so now I'm kind of thinking about indexing pins for the machine, and I just want to do some sort of a shop built solution. I ideas yet. But basically I want to down the zero side of the y-axis all the way down the length of the x-axis. I want to put a series of pins so that when I slide these big pieces of material on it, just push it up to it and then pull the pins out. You know, I'm not going to get into fancy pneumatics or anything. I just want a quick, easy solution to index things, turn the vacuum on, go to work.
What about some of those Destaco, you know, the lever ones that just push in and out rather than the clamp down ones? You know, they got a threaded, you know, I'm talking about the toggle clamps, but the ones that just in and out, and just instead of having the foot on the end of it, put a little sort of sacrificial nub that goes on the top. Just mount those so that you throw the lever up. They seem to be pretty tight. I don't think there's much variation in the, they might be, all you do is bump a couple of those. They're pretty cheap. And and then just lever them back down.
Yeah, that's an idea.
It's pretty analog, but it's, it might be at least to try a nice, easy solution.
Yeah. So, you know, indexing pins in tandem with vacuum table really increases productivity a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty dramatic.
So,
so I need at least a pin, maybe a couple of pins on the y-axis, and then a series of pins down the x-axis to sort of register the material and slide it forward, stop it, turn the vacuum on, and you can start cutting without having to think, you know, without having to walk, because right now I'm getting the material on the bed, I'm walking all the way around it, I'm sort of squaring it up, going to the back, squaring that up, coming back up to the front, squaring that up. And what I found is, you know, basically what I'm doing is using the machine, because I never get it indexed exactly the same. You know, it's always off some minute amount.
Sure.
I'm using the machine to cut square, to find square within the sheet of material every time, probably wasting more material than I have to do that. But, you know, there will still be some margin of that, but I think it would be quicker with some indexing pins.
Yeah.
So anyway, so the vacuum system I built, now that I've been using it since we first started talking about it, I found that I overbuilt the hell out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it pulls way more vacuum than I thought it was going to pull. So I have proved the Bill Young theory of one motor pulling negative pressure through the other motor. You were absolutely right.
Yeah. It'd be interesting. I'm sorry I'm right.
But no, it's okay. It's okay. I just have vacuums for days.
Yeah. Well, that's, you know, too much is as in most things, too much is better than not enough.
Right. Well, what I found was, you know, I built this, I'll send you some pictures so you can post them in the video, but I built this manifold that has 4 240 volt Lamb Amatec vacuum motors on it. These are the newer generation that have the serviceable brushes in them and all that. And they're really nice motors. I mean, they're powerful motors. So I bought them from the Lighthouse motor guy you told me about. And he got them right to me. It was great. So I went from this manifold where you have the 4 motors mounted to a plate, and I put the plate discreetly underneath the sort of the back left end of the machine.
Okay.
And they come out of that manifold, and there's a control valve on each one of the motors coming into this main duct. Okay. Go down that duct to a secondary manifold that controls the zones. Okay. Vacuum to each zone on the table, right? And I made a 5-zone plenum on the table. Did that with Xtera and then sealed it with shellac. I used a 1/2-inch ball nose to cut the channels with. Just serious airflow. I don't know that it matters once. Yeah. You know, well, you and I talked about this a while back, but once you've created vacuum, it's in a constant state of vacuum, is my understanding of it. But my theory was that initial inrush would just be more efficient. I don't know, maybe I'm just making this up, but I did it with a 1/2-inch ball nose.
You're cutting through, and as soon as you cut through the thing, you're you know, you got a little bit of flow. You know, it doesn't stay in any state for long. If it ever is, it doesn't stay for long like that.
So everything's plumbed with 2-inch white PVC. And then I just used, I did spring for the American made ball valves. I don't know that there's any difference. They were $2 more per ball valve to buy American. But the one thing that I noticed was the Chinese ones that were available at one store, they're essentially identical. Mm-hmm. But the Chinese ones I found were like impossible to turn. And
they really are. They were
really hard to turn.
You have to make a wrench, and they're always in an awkward place. You're kind of reaching around and grab them, and they're just those things are. And you don't want to.
So the American ball valves you can get with all different colors. So I have on the vacuum manifold, I have black valves, and then on the table manifold, I've got red valves. So you know, it just makes it a little easier to follow and describe. Once we get students back in here, you know, I can say turn the red valve, you know, labeled zone 1, you know, that kind of thing. So and they're not impossible to turn. They're still very stiff. Because they're supposed to be watertight, so they
you don't want to be rattling around and opening and closing it all while you're.
But I'll tell you, Bill. So then I routed all that to a series of, and I can tell you about the shenanigan of switching. But ultimately, I landed on double pole, single throw switches, right? So it just looks like a light switch, except it's for 240 volt or 208 or whatever. I have 208 in the building, so we're not pulling a true 240, but the switch is rated for 240 volts. So you just have 2 lines in, 2 lines out, right? Line and load side of the switch. It's an on and off.
Rows, and it's got the big, it's functionally that switch with the 2 arms and the bar between it.
You know, I went to the electrical supply house and asked them for Frankenstein switches, and they just.
This is what they gave you? This is the sealed Frankenstein.
What are you talking about?
But that's basically what you
know. And I did the whole animated thing at the counter, like it's alive, and they just looked at me like,
"This is what
we have things to do.
Here, buy 6 of these out of here.
Here, take this plastic thing instead." You know, it's like
we got serious people.
No imagination at all. You're the most boring people on earth. Anyway, so I had this switch shenanigan that lasted forever, and we ended up, the first go at the electrical supply house was they gave me double pole I can't think, four-way switches. So when I initially turned on the system, and I'd gone through this exercise of wiring up all these switches and doing all this stuff, I didn't look at them, and the guy at the electric supply house didn't either. You know, he just pulled them from the bin, and obviously what had happened was a stocking error. Right. So when he pulled the number on the part, he pulled this thing, and somebody had put the wrong switch in there. He didn't look at it. I didn't look at it. They look, for all intents and purposes, the same. But a four-way just switches polarity, right? So it's all on all the time. If there's not a main on and off,
there's not
to control.
If it doesn't have the other way.
So I go over to the breaker box after everything's wired up and turn it on, and all four motors go, you know, I'm like, ah. So I run over here and I turn the switches, and nothing happens. They just sort of, there's this click, and probably some fire somewhere, or a little spark or something. You know, I was like, turn it all off. You know, I was pretty well convinced that I burned everything up, but in the end, I figured it out, disconnected everything, got the right switches, put it all back in, checked continuity everywhere. Had a friend of mine come over that's an electrician, look at all the connections.
He could push you away from the source when you electrocuted.
You know, just call me first next time, you know, kind of thing. No, but we got it. In all seriousness, we had it done the right way. But anyway, it's a pretty simple system, and it only, you know, for $1,000, right at $1,000, we have a very serious vacuum system that I now know didn't require 4 motors for the 5 zones. Right. So basically I took one of the designs I found on ShopBot, I don't know, some ShopBot link somewhere, that had a table that somebody, you or Gordon or somebody had designed out, that's a 5 zone for a 5x10 table. And I just modified it to fit the 5x8 section of my table that I'm using. So I have down the far end of the y-axis, it runs the full length of the X.
Okay. To make
and
that.
And then the 4x8 section is in 4, you know, equal size zones, kind of rectilinear zone. So anyway, I put an independent switch for each motor. Okay. And then I pipe the manifold into each zone independently. So it's all valved and all this fancy stuff.
You can run as many motors as you want.
And I ran it, you know, with all 4 motors on for the first couple of times I ran it. You know, pretty short runs. I ran it with all 4 motors. And then I realized I was like, man, it sounds funny. So I turned everything off, and I realized what's happening is that, you know, just as you told me, there's always going to be a stronger motor, and the stronger motor is pulling backwards through 1 or 2 of the other motors, and it's making this weird backdraft sound. And so I ended up shutting off, you know, I thought, well, let's just go back to 0 and let's eliminate probabilities, right? So I turned off 3 of the 4 vacuum motors, shut the valves off to them, turned 1 motor on, opened all 5 zones on the table, and I have just as much vacuum off of 1 motor as I have running off all 4.
You just need to find which one's the alpha motor and run that one. Which one's doing the most work?
Well, you know, I'm sort of debating on the theory of just running 1 motor at a time
until it burns up,
until one of them burns up, and then just go, well, you're out, buddy.
Yeah, middle last.
The rest of them are in the bullpen warming up all the time.
Yeah. No, I think that's
But if you turn 1 motor on in that manifold and leave the valves open to the other 3, it pulls air through the motor.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
And through the table.
It's got to. It's losing.
Oh, it's just tremendous.
And it's more of a leak, I think, through the motor, and it's probably spinning the impeller backwards, and it's probably doing all kinds of bad things.
Oh yeah, and I'm sure that's probably, you know, would cause problems if you did it long term.
Did you leave your? Did you?
So 1 motor, 1 Lamb Amatec motor, 240 volt does the trick.
Yeah. Did you enclose the motors, or are they out in the air? You didn't put them in a box. You didn't seal them.
No, but I'll tell you what I am going to do is, I've already cut the parts. I just haven't assembled it yet. but basically the whole back half of my table, you know, you've got the sort of 1, 2, 3 leg assemblies on the ShopBot. From the middle leg to the end, the far end of the x-axis, I'm going to build just plywood walls around that and just enclose that, and then have it exhaust out into the room.
Okay.
Just to cut down on some of the noise, because those motors are loud. I mean, it's like, it's like standing at a commercial car wash, you know, with all those big vacuum motors running. It's, I mean, we had a Trevani at the old shop, and that thing was so loud, it was outside the building.
Right. Yeah.
These are really no different. I don't know that they pull vacuum as efficiently as one of those big vacuum motors, but I mean, it held 5 by 10 sheets of material, cutting reasonably small parts without throwing any parts. I did run a couple of test patterns with some really small parts just to find where it would throw apart, you know, just to get an idea. So like the far corners of the spoil board, it will not hold anything smaller than about 12 inches, right? 12 inches in length in one direction. And I haven't run it because I don't want to break a bit, you know, on purpose, but I think that needs to be probably 8 to 10 inches into the spoil board or the bleeder board. And you know, it'll hold, but you know, basically on the front zone, the home XY axes zone, I've cut small parts by just creating a little bit of an offset with masking, just using pre-finished 1/4-inch plywood scraps that I have from the cabinets we built. I just mask it off like 3 inches in from the edge. And then I made the kids some, you know, little holiday decorations, Merry Christmas signs and stuff for their rooms. And they're small. I mean, they're, you know, 8 to 10 inches long or something, 3 inches wide, just little stacked letter Merry Christmas thing. And I was trying to test to see if it would hold a part that small and do, you know, pretty heavy milling into it. And it did. It held it just fine. It just, as long as you mask it off. And that was as good as, I felt like the vacuum is as good as what we had that was, you know, 1,000 times more expensive than this. I mean, Trevani was stupidly expensive. And these motors are like $200 a piece.
And you know, you can gain a lot by just putting 1 or 2 tabs. Put a little 3D tab in it if you're worried about some. You know, I cut those little, we call them hatchets, but those little sort of trapezoidal blocks are really small for the hold the shelter together. And 1 tab at the start point, I can cut a full sheet of those, which is, I don't know, 1,000 of them or something. I mean, it's a ton of them, and just row after row. And if you tool path it right, so it cuts in a sensible way, and 1 little tab. And you know, in those, it doesn't make any, they're hidden all the time. So you don't even have to take the tab off. You just bust them loose and put them in a 5.
Right. Yeah.
Tabs work pretty, and you do a good job of placing them.
Reduce the number of tabs, you know, overall. I use tabs, of course, but you know, the fewer of them that I have to cut off, the faster we're able to work.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, you want to minimize them, but sometimes 1 little tab will, it'll keep it from.
It makes all the difference.
You know, it keeps it from, once it breaks loose and rotates a little bit, then it's lost. Then you suck dust underneath it. And it's, if you don't get any dust underneath the part, it'll keep holding with a lot of cut. But as soon as it kicks a little bit and breaks that vacuum, then that's it. Then you've got a big hole. So it's, yeah, sort of the tab, I think, gives it more resistance to this kind of motion than the lifting motion. And
right.
Cool,
well,
man.
I think if I was to do anything over again, Bill, I'd probably just buy 2 motors instead of 4. 4 was overkill.
I think so too. I think in general, people seem to think, you know, more is better, and I don't think more is always better. Lots of times it's better, But I think,
well, I'll just blame the ShopBot community because they all got me down that road.
yeah,
There's some really fancy stuff on that forum with guys that have spent a lot of money. I mean, would have been probably better off just buying a Becker rotary vane from ShopBot and just plumbing it in. I mean, I saw some where these guys are building all kinds of really tricky gizmos to hold these motors and valve stuff off automatically and all this. I mean, it's just crazy expensive.
Yeah.
And there's no, I can't find that there's any real benefit from doing any of that. I mean, your method is like a box on the floor with some shop vac hose and it works for all the crazy things that you're making.
Gosh, yeah, it's been working.
And I sort of started with the Bill approach and then said, well, the only thing that I really want to do is just clean it up and make it something where students can come in and they can use it repeatedly and turn things on and off.
Yeah.
And it's all done, with the safety is kind of the first motivating thing.
Yeah, and you also give people the best chance of success in the beginning.
Right.
The first thing they do fails, no matter what it is they're doing. If they're hand cutting dovetails or CNC cutting or whatever, you want to give them the first best shot at early success.
Yep.
The secret.
And that's
no matter what.
I do like the combination of the way that I built things out. I built everything off of the leg to the inside underneath the table. So you can walk right down that axis of the machine without catching anything. There's nothing sticking out past the rails. It's all tucked underneath the machine, nice and clean. It's a good installation. So I spent a little time on it, but it wasn't bad. So I'll send you some pictures, and that way you guys can add them into the video and people can see it. But I love it. It works great.
I like to see
it adds a little heat to the room.
Yeah.
So
let's do that. You can see how
these months that matters.
How your soundproofing stuff works out, because they are loud. And I got the mufflers from them, which I'm not convinced do. They do some for sure. But they.
Well, I didn't put any muffler on them at all. I just put them on this manifold and went with it. But my notion is I don't use any of the space underneath the back part of the table for anything other than just cramming stuff that's in my way. So maybe this will help me keep the floor reasonably clean under there and knock down some of the sound.
Yeah, I've been thinking about doing that with just a styrofoam. Just get some 1-inch foam insulation and make a box that's just open on one side, just to sort of.
Well, that's what this is going to be. So if the rail of the table is here, I have the motors on a manifold mounted sideways,
right,
and they're blowing down to the floor, right. So my thought is, if it's walled in around it all the way around, but open to the floor on one side, it's just going to blow out. I mean, it's got plenty of incoming air, plenty of space to exhaust. I don't think it's going to overheat them. I'm not convinced that a lot of these guys that are doing these fancy boxed in manifolds, I'm not convinced that that's keeping those motors running cool.
Yeah, it seems like they
produce a lot of heat. I put one of those little Harbor Freight, digital thermometer on it, and they're cooking.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it was running, but just in a little while of me running it, I think it was 125 degrees or something, and boxing that in is just going to increase the heat. I can't imagine that that's helping the motor.
It never seemed like it made sense to me. I'm not convinced that my wide open screaming all day long is asleep, but somewhere there's a middle ground.
Right. Well, there's engineers out there that know better than we do.
Yeah. For sure.
My theory is, if a machine don't put a box around it.
Yeah, I figured if putting them in a box is a good idea, he'd sell a box for them. That would be on their online store. Oh, you want a box for that? Put it right in this box. It'll make it quiet. Well, cool, man. Yeah, I want to see some pictures. Sounds good.
Yeah, I'll send those to you today. And we can get the editing staff maybe to punch those into the video for us.
Our videographer to get it sorted out. Sounds good, man. We'll have fun.
We'll have those people do. We don't have time for all that. We'll have those people do it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, sounds good, man.
Bill, it's good to see you back in the shop, man.
Yeah, it feels good after being away for a month. It feels I left it pretty messy, so I'm in the process of trying to sort all that stuff out. You know, the stuff I should have cleaned up before I left, so I'd come back to a nice clean shop. Of course, I didn't do any of that stuff. So I've got lots of just piles of crap.
Yeah. Hey, before we go, I wanted to bring up a couple of quick things. One is our tentative plan at this point. I don't want to overstate this, but with vaccines now being administered, you know, we have spent some time over the holidays working on a phased reopening for the furniture school.
Nice.
So I want to sort of, you know, tepidly announce that. We're thinking that, you know, depending on how these vaccines go, we are going to have to require vaccines for attendance to classes. So people have to bring that vaccination card to come to the school.
You got to cover yourself, and you know, you want to make it
well, and everybody else that comes here. You know, we're gonna have people of all different, you know, belief systems and all that kind of stuff. And the bottom line is we all have to play the same game by the same rules. So we're not going to get into that discussion if we just have a blanket rule that says, hey, it's bad. Get a vaccine. If you want to come to school, get a vaccine. I mean, you know, we're following the same rules that the state of North Carolina requires for attendance to public school. And, you know, you have to have polio vaccine to go to school, that kind of thing. So I've spoken to our lawyer about it, and he said, look, the bottom line is, from a legal perspective, you want to just make sure that everybody's playing by the same rules.
Yep.
Require a vaccine. The state of North Carolina is going to require it, so you require it. And I said, okay.
Makes sense.
So anyway, we are looking at we've got some private groups that we're going to schedule early in the year, and then hopefully by second quarter, some of the folks that are eligible for vaccines should be getting those. You know, a lot of our students are in the age group that would be eligible to receive that vaccine in the first round when it's made public, and you know, all that kind of stuff. So I'm feeling like we can reopen hopefully by the second quarter with that, and then potentially full throttle by summer.
Yeah.
You know, that's optimistic, but we're planning as though that's the case.
Yeah.
And then yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta plan for the best case scenario, and hopefully, but be aware that there's a worst case scenario in there lurking in the background, and if you know. But I think that makes a lot of sense. I think the vaccine thing is, I mean, there's gonna be so many things that are gonna require that. I mean, it's just, you're gonna have to do it. And if somebody don't want to play by those rules, they're gonna wait till it's all.
Well, I was reading some of the state guidelines for education, and they're gonna require, as soon as there is a vaccine that is showing to be effective for kids, the state has already basically released I mean, they haven't released a formal public statement yet, but there's noise about it online on the state websites for education that they will be requiring a vaccine for attendance to school. So I know the university system is talking the same. That, you know, I don't think they've released a formal statement yet, but that is the same noise that I'm hearing in the education circles. So we'll follow whatever the state guidelines are. The other thing I wanted to mention was Camp ShopBot. You and I've been kind of colluding on this, trying to get a Camp ShopBot rescheduled for 2021 because we had to cancel last year's. So are we still on on track with that?
Yeah,
Should we tell these folks?
Let's shoot for the. We'll sort of come up with a tentative date sometime June, July, something like that. Sort of see, we can't say 100% because we don't know what's going to happen in the next couple of months. But I think we'll do that. Since you were the first in the series supposedly last year, we'll do yours and see how it does. And we'll, like I said, we'll do the same kind of vaccine required, social distance, mask, whatever's is best practices when the time comes. Give everybody plenty of warning.
Yeah.
But we'll pick a time that seems good. We'll pick a Saturday and then
I feel like if we go ahead and start registration, maybe we don't have to collect any money or anything until we know that we can do it.
Yeah.
But I feel like if we go ahead and start registration, we have the time to plan it, and we can put all those mechanisms in place to make that happen.
Yep.
If we're able to do it when the time comes.
Yeah.
So
we'll get that started. We'll get the process and invites and, get it public and just tell people that, we're optimistically thinking that this is going to happen. We'll give you plenty of warning if it doesn't. If it looks like things are not, and maybe we'll have to put it off for another couple of months. We'll just have to see how. We're very early in this sort of vaccine. We're late in the.
We're crossing fingers and hoping not. I mean, we're shooting for a full reopening if we can. We're gonna try to stay optimistic at all costs.
I think so too. No, I agree. Yeah, we'll start working on that. We'll and then we'll see how this camp goes and how comfortable people are, and then we'll start sort of adding them back to the schedule.
Excellent.
Cool, man.
Well, let's start feeding it out to the public then.
All right. I'll see if I can get it on the ShopBot calendars. We'll pick just kind of a random date and sometimes see what works for all of us. Pick a time and
cool.
Get people interested. Cool, man.
Well, say hello to your bride for us.
I'll do it. She's been clean. I don't know what we've done for a month. I can't imagine it's all that dirty, but I don't have the same standards as she did.
Right.
We'll have to. He's having a great time doing that.
We spent the last couple of days cleaning our house, so we came in here and cleaned up a little bit in the shop, and cleaned up at home. So we're kind of reset, in a good way. So now I'm going to make a big mess and
yeah. That's our job. Oh, cool, man.
Right.
Take it easy, bud.
Have a good day, Bill. Bye. All right, man. Bye.